No worries. So just quickly, I'll just run through the agenda really fast here. So, the focus today is, of course, the secure access service edge, right? And really, I'm going to look at it from the perspective of the managed service provider, and really look at what the transformations, what's happening, taking this big concept, breaking it down into 4 usage scenarios, and I'll use these usage scenarios to really, one, make it so you can easily relate to what problem SASE is solving, right? And look at kind of a traditional deployment for each, and then what a SASE deployment for each of these look like, and then we can talk about what the drivers are behind that transformation, where it fits into your customer's network, the challenges that I'm hearing from MSPs around the world that's driving these changes and this transformation. Kind of looking at each of these 4 deployment scenarios, and again how it moves from a traditional deployment to what would be considered a SASE-based deployment. We'll dive into the security implications of each of these, and again, both from a driver's perspective and what problems that it solves. And then I'll wrap it up with sort of some, as an MSP, some of the key considerations that you need to be looking at from vendor selection to technology to roadmap and things like that, and what you should be thinking about when you're sort of deciding what your own SASE strategy should be. Okay, so again, I'm just going to start here with a just kind of an introduction, right? Really kind of very high level. We'll start sort of at the beginning here with this concept SASE, right? Secure Access Service Edge, and so what this means, just to kind of give a very high level, it's a term coined by Gartner back in I believe it was 2019 in a paper that was published called "The Future of Network Security is in the Cloud," and it really talks about sort of these transformations, what's happening in the industry with customer networks, with applications moving to the cloud, users moving off the network, and sort of the implications of this and how that's driving the future of networking and the future of security, and really how these two things come together. And we'll talk about the kind of the cloud elements, which are really sort of important. And it's really about how these, how our customers' topology for both network and security needs to change in order to address these shifts in their topology. And so the question that I get a lot is this something new, right? Is this, what's different, what's new about this? And I think the answer to that is both yes and no, right? I think the paper and the concept is really a well-articulated solution that brings a lot of concepts together, but there are a lot of existing concepts, right? Independently, a lot of really important existing concepts. And what SASE does, it sort of is this meta framework that brings all these concepts together into an architecture that can really kind of help us drive where we're going. And it's important to understand that it's this very kind of, again, very meta, very large concept, and you really need to break it down, and we'll go through some of that today. And you need to develop a roadmap, right? This is not something that you want to implement overnight. And kind of use case by use case or scenario by scenario, over time, you'll think about how you can leverage some of these components and move towards sort of a SASE sort of implementation. And again, understanding the drivers behind that really help you prioritize where you need to focus on your customers' networks for that. So we're going to start out here with a polling question. Alicia, It's going to pull that up for us.
Can you see the poll? Yes.
I do not see the poll. I don't know if the
okay, don't worry.
sees
People
it.
is voting now. Just wait
Okay.
a few seconds and I will share the results.
Oh,
people is
okay. I do see it now, which is good. So the first question here is just, as an MSP, are you deploying, are you selling SASE today? And I used A there as sort of, you know, a lot of people say, hey, I want a SASE. Do you guys have a SASE? What is, and we'll break that down. But I really kind of want to get a baseline of where you are as MSPs. And, you know, this, you know, looking at this kind of spectrum from, yeah, I get it, and we're doing it today. You know, I understand it, but I'm not really deploying it yet. So just kind of looking at it, learning more. A lot of people, kind of this third answer, a lot of people are confused, right? Every vendor has a different definition for what SASE is, and so just really trying to learn what it is and get it out. So.
Here you
so
have
see the results here.
Can you see it, right?
I do not see the results.
Don't you see the results? Well, if you want me, I can.
Well, here they are. Yep,
okay.
They just came up.
Perfect.
Okay, really interesting. 35% of the respondents said difficult to answer. Every vendor has uses the term in a different way. Everybody in the industry is defining it different. And I see a lot of this, quite honestly, in the industry, right? It's a hot kind of buzzword, and so you know, so we see startups saying, "Hey, I'm a SASE, you know, come buy me. I'm a SASE," and it's really important to understand, you know, what all the usage scenarios are, what's important to you. Again, we'll break that down. So hopefully you'll leave this session with a foundation that'll be able to help you understand at least the overall concepts better, and the vendor landscape, including WatchGuard's position here. Okay, so we'll continue on. Excellent. Let's see here. Okay, so how does SASE fit, right? I talk about these 4 usage scenarios. And so I'm gonna, again, I'll break these down. I'll talk about a traditional deployment, and then we'll map that to a SASE deployment. So you kind of see both the challenges of traditional that we're trying to address with SASE, and then what that transformation looks like, what a future a more cloud-based SASE-based architecture would look like, right? And so I kind of break it down into these 4 very relatable deployment scenarios that you're doing today, that you're doing in a traditional network. So the first one is, I'm connecting 2 networks together, right? I got site A and site B, or I got a data center and 2 branch offices, or a data center and a branch office, and I'm trying to connect those together, right? These are traditionally site-to-site VPNs. The second one is, I got people at the office and they are accessing the internet, right? They're going through traditionally a UTM, a next generation firewall, accessing the internet, and they're accessing SaaS applications, right? They're going to Office 365, to Salesforce, to all your typical SaaS applications, or they're going to the internet, right? And that going to the internet scenario is really important, right? Because that's where they're getting their malware and bringing it back into the office. So an internal user accessing external applications or external resources. And then you got the other 2 kind of sides of this, right? An external user, right? Somebody working remotely, somebody traveling, hopefully soon, somebody working from home, and they need to access resources that are on the network, right? They're private. They're VPNing into the network to get to on-premises resources, and those could be in a data center. They could be in infrastructure as a service, AWS, Azure, Google, and but they're coming into the network to access those. And then the fourth one is, I have a remote user who's accessing public data, right? They're public SaaS and internet sites. And this is really interesting, right? Because they're not kind of going over a network boundary, but I need to be able to secure them and secure them as they're going both to those SaaS applications and the internet, right? So we'll dig into each of these four scenarios here, but again, I want to jump into a polling question. So I still don't see it, Alicia. I don't know if the audience does.
I can see it. I don't know if now people is starting to vote. So it's kind of delayed between I press show and.
Oh, yep, I got it now. Great. So which deployment scenario of those four do you think is most important for you as an MSP and for your customers, right? Connecting offices together, office worker going external, a remote user coming VPNing into the network, or a remote user going to the internet. What is your priority? What do you think is most important right now?
People is still voting. I'm just giving a little bit more of time.
Oh, no worries.
Okay, they are still voting. A few more seconds. Okay.
Okay, let's see.
Can you see the results?
Question went away. The question went away. I don't see the results yet.
Okay, well, it must be about to be shown. I
can see here them. It is. Okay, got the results. Excellent. So almost half of the respondents are remote workers accessing something in the private network, right? And what's really interesting, I'll talk a little bit about the obvious impact of the pandemic. This whole concept of SASE really started out initially focusing more on site-to-site connections and focusing more on things like this convergence of SD-WAN and security as a service coming together. So it's really interesting to see both SASE as a concept has really flipped, and the priority is aligned with this. It's really about the remote worker, right? We can see almost 80% of you are focused on the remote worker now, no surprise. And so has SASE, and the SASE industry really kind of changed that view, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So let's dive into each of these four deployment scenarios and a little bit deeper. So the first one is this idea of connecting traditional offices together, right? And again, this is sort of your SD-WAN sort of use case, and you have two sites, right? It's in its kind of most basic form. Typically, I have multi-WAN. I want to connect multiple connections between these sites. I may be leveraging the internet and VPN over the internet, or I may be leveraging MPLS and then kind of deciding which traffic goes over each one of these things. So what are the challenges with doing this? Well, first of all, right, one of the big drivers, one of the initial drivers of SASE was that on-premises applications are going away, right? They're moving to the cloud. A lot of you as MSPs, right? I've heard over the past, even since the pandemic started, a lot of your business is driven by getting those applications off the premise, right? Getting them into the cloud, moving them to infrastructure as a service, moving them to SaaS as a service. And so the relevance of even connecting two sites together is reducing as those applications are moving to the cloud. Adding new sites in this kind of traditional manner, it's difficult, it's expensive. I have a lot of policy I got to deal with. I got mesh networking. It's complicated. Not only, I think about this two-site scenario. It's not too bad, right? I got 4 connections here, but it exponentially increases as I add more sites, right? And it becomes more difficult about how am I routing between locations. It's expensive. I got to buy equipment and deal with the MPLS providers and things like that. It's difficult to maintain, right? It's we hear a lot about, you know, configuration issues and how a lot of security breaches are really driven by complexity, right? And so this idea that, you know, the more complex your network is, the more expensive it is for you as an MSP or your customer to maintain, and it will translate into some security implications as well. And then it just becomes inefficient, right? I'm constantly, you hear me talk a lot, say this a lot, right? I'm routing my traffic to the security instead of bringing the security to where the traffic is already flowing, right? So a lot of times you're gonna have a centralized security approach, and I'm routing my traffic to make sure that I can apply my security services before they travel to the other site. So it's very inefficient. When I think about the security implications, right, you do have to make these decisions about how am I gonna deploy my security? Am I gonna do it in that centralized manner, right, which is inefficient from a traffic perspective, or am I gonna do it in a distributed manner, right? I can put my security out at each of the sites, but then that becomes, you know, again, that adds complexity and cost. Typically, you're zero routing traffic on a site-to-site VPN, right? All of your traffic is typically going back and forth. This has security implications as well, right? You're opening yourself to, you know, if you're not segmenting those networks sufficiently, you're opening yourself to more lateral movement within your environment if malware does get in. So the second scenario that I want to talk about is this, again, an office worker now accessing something public, right? I'm in the office and I'm using Office 365, right? So I'm in the network and I'm going out to the internet, and what that looks like. And again, typically you'll have your security at headquarters or in the data center. I might be in a branch office, and that traffic is routed through that security and then out to the internet, maybe at the data center headquarters. So what are some of the challenges here? So in this case, right, I'm talking about a worker in the office accessing the network. So in the previous scenario, we talked about applications disappearing, right? Applications moving to the cloud. In this scenario, on-premise workers have disappeared, right? They're working at home. This idea that I'm going to prioritize this on-premises user to accessing the network is diminishing. Again, you're introducing these hairpinning concepts. Hairpinning means, right, I'm bringing traffic over here to, you know, in this case, apply security, then it comes back and then out. And so I'm creating these network inefficiencies by introducing that. And then, you know, in doing this again, adding sites and planning where my users are going to be and how I'm going to apply these security policies and this routing. As you expand, it becomes more and more expensive. And I think again about the security implications. You know, again, in this case, I'm bringing the security or the traffic to the security. I have to worry a lot about, you know, as my users, my user base increases, how do I keep up on my security stack, right? How do I make sure that my security stack and my networking stack can grow and shrink along with my on-premises user base? And then you have a constantly, right, you're upgrading and adding new services and, you know, kind of bringing new services into that stack. And that's expensive to do over time. So the third usage kind of deployment scenario that I want to talk about here is a remote worker accessing something on the private network, right? This was the kind of the number one use case that you guys identified and how that works. And again, when we look at a traditional deployment, it's IPsec or SSL VPN, maybe VPNing into the headquarters, right? Maybe my RDP session is out at a branch office, or I'm accessing maybe something even in infrastructure as a service. I'm routing through headquarters to get there, and you know, when we think about this and this remote user use case, right, as it's sort of exploded for all of us over the last year, you know, it's almost like a branch office of one person, right? But now I have hundreds or thousands of them for all of my employees, and trying to manage that and give them that same level of security that they had when they were in the office. I can manage that with software clients. I talked to some of our partners who are managing that with hardware appliances out at the endpoint, right? Trying to make that a consistent user experience, but it's complex to deploy in that sort of scenario. You're dealing with a lot of latency issues here, right? Very inefficient, especially, you know, like in this scenario where I'm going to infrastructure as a service, that inefficiency. And then I have to deal with the scalability of my VPN stack now, right? You know, if overnight all my users are at home, you know, I need to be able to scale that up very quickly. I may want to scale that down over time as people move into a hybrid scenario. And then some of those same things with my security stack, I need to be able to kind of have those be elastic as well. And I think about the security implications here. And now as soon as I start talking about a home user, I'm opening myself up to all sorts of new threat vectors, right? My threat surface is dramatically increased. I'm worried now, not just about that user at home, but what's going on in that home network. That home network is a very hostile environment, right? Segmenting is, you know, nearly impossible in some of these cases. And you know, again, you're really opening yourself up. Again, if you're, you know, we see people zero route traffic over their VPNs, and opening themselves up to new threats through movement through those VPN tunnels now into the corporate network, and increasing their exposure there. And then the fourth scenario, right, is a home user now accessing the internet, right? My home user, my remote worker now, right? He's doing work from home. And he's accessing Office 365. He's accessing Salesforce, other SaaS applications, accessing the internet as well. And so now as this remote user is accessing these resources, in the VPN case, I could apply security services because I had them in the corporate office, right? If they're directly accessing the internet, now I have some difficult decisions to make, and we're seeing sort of two scenarios here. So one is, right, if they're going to SaaS applications, I may be using secure web gateways or CASB solutions to give myself some protection. But then you got to really consider the rest of the traffic, right? What are they doing? Are they splitting their time on their home PCs now, doing both personal and work related activities? And does that open up more exposure, all that other traffic that's going into the network? How do I manage that? And this opens up all sorts of new security implications. And so again, this idea of these home machines now in this very hostile environment, accessing the internet, and then maybe VPNing in as well, and creating this whole new threat vector of you know, being able to protect both of those environments. And again, it kind of introduces this interesting choice of, do I route all of their traffic through the corporate office so I can apply security? Do I deploy a security stack at their home, right, which is rare that we see, or I just let them route out to the internet directly? right? Which is, obviously the most efficient choice, but now I'm providing limited to no security to those users at all, and I have to rely solely on maybe endpoint security in that case. And it just really opens up this whole new threat surface to attack your corporate data on that person's machine, but also to your corporate network as they come on and off the network. So if you really kind of break down kind of networking scenarios into these 4 kind of very basic building blocks, and then you look at some of the security challenges of each, we can now take SASE concepts and look at how SASE applies to each of these 4 scenarios, and then it can help you kind of break down and prioritize the different things that you need to do in your network. So let's start with a polling question before we dive into that. I'm gonna have to speed up here some of these technical difficulties. I'm behind schedule. Are you guys seeing the question here?
Yes, people has started to vote, so they should.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, how's the pandemic changed your customers' priorities, right? What has happened there? I'm busy moving customer applications to the cloud, right? Saw a lot of that early in the pandemic. I'm enabling work from home. I'm now worried about return to work, right? And our priority now is, okay, right, in the next 3 to 6 months or now, people are coming back to the office. How do I get ready for that? And the fourth one, my priorities haven't changed, right? The pandemic, right? A little bit of chaos, but I haven't really changed my customers have not really changed their priorities for me. So let's see the results here.
Can you see the results or not yet?
Not yet. It seems like it takes a second or two.
Yes, it takes a few seconds.
Okay. So the results here, enabling work from home is the top priority, and 61%, right? And kind of the rest are kind of split between the other 3. It's actually interesting to see 14% say that their priorities haven't changed, because I think that enabling work from home, return to the office, moving applications to the cloud is kind of the most of what we're hearing, the challenges that MSPs are facing now. So, okay, so let's get back to the presentation here. And so when we look at these 4 scenarios, I've kind of broken them down into kind of these 2 sections, and kind of thinking about what priorities look like. Pre-pandemic, it was about cloud enablement, right? Planning. We saw a lot of planning of moving applications to the cloud. This idea of SD-WAN, how do I connect sites together, was top of mind, right? And especially how do I inject security into my SD-WAN strategy so that I have good, efficient networking, but I want security. A lot of that was edge managed, right? It was cloud managed, right? So you had your control plane in the cloud, but very distributed and edge managed, creating mesh networks between those sites. And then, working on, making my network more efficient, really working on cost savings around how can I do it in a more cost-effective and efficient manner. Post-pandemic, right? It just like the poll results showed, everybody is really moved to focusing on remote work enablement, right? How do I not only, I think initially everybody was, I got to get them productive and working. Now everybody's coming back and saying, I got to do it. I got to get security applied to those users the same way that I had security for them when they were in the office, right? People were focused on VPN initially. Now it's about, how do I create more efficiency, better security over those VPNs, and this idea that that the home is this branch office of one, right, and many branch offices of one, and how do I kind of manage that environment? So we really kind of see this flip of priorities. And the beauty of SASE is it really thought about both, right? It thought about a user, and it's really, in a lot of ways, it's sort of independent of where the user is, whether on the network or at home. But it did talk a lot about initially about this SD-WAN use case, and it allows us to switch these priorities, but have that same framework, that same underlying framework to address both, which is great, because I can change my priorities here without having to change my my technology roadmap. Okay, so now let's dive deeper into SASE, right? And then we can take these concepts and then apply them to those 4 deployment scenarios to really understand how this evolution is going to take place. And so it's all about this concept of networking and security converging in the cloud, right? And bringing those things together. It's that transformation of the enterprise hub from the data center where it was before, right? In those 4 deployment scenarios I drew out for you, there was always a headquarters, right? There was always a data center where all your traffic was. That was your hub of your hub and spoke networking. And instead of moving your traffic to your security, you're putting your security in line with your traffic, right? And so it kind of it flips that around, right? So it removes all of those inefficiencies that we talked about, where, you know, I have this security stack somewhere, right? It's in my data center, it's in my headquarters, it's maybe at my branch offices, but I got to route all my traffic to that security. And the whole idea of SASE is for that to go away. So you kind of take these 2 big concepts, right? The hub of my network moving to the cloud, and putting security in line with my traffic, bringing the security to my traffic. And then it brings these 2 concepts together. So first is networking as a service, right? So think about this big kind of managed cloud infrastructure, a worldwide set of points of presence, of POPs that are interconnected to each other in a very efficient way. And it allows me to optimize my routing within that managed core. The vendor can manage the routing for you in this managed core in a way that allows me to get to SaaS applications very efficiently, right? I can route to the nearest POP and drop that traffic off right next to the SaaS application. It makes that very efficient. It allows me to solve these different use cases we've talked about, right? Connecting offices together, bringing remote users into it, and then connecting the internet and allowing access to the internet. So think about now the cloud is my hub, and I'm connecting these different things into it, and I'll draw it out for you. The second concept is security as a service, right? And creating this unified security platform of security services that are offered. And I have this kind of uniform set of security services now that I can apply to all of these different deployment scenarios, right? And again, I've taken the security to my traffic, so I can provide this nice consistent set of services to my users, no matter which of those deployment scenarios that we're talking about. And a lot of the common types of services that are in this unified security stack are things like a secure web gateway, right? Doing web filtering and application control, things like that. CASB concepts, looking at access control and DLP and you know your typical CASB value proposition, DNS filtering, right? Providing DNS firewalling, DNS filtering, and you know, the list goes on, right? I can do advanced malware protection in their sandboxing, cloud sandboxing, and provide that full security stack very uniformly across each of these deployment scenarios. And I can do it in a way that that's very efficient, right? I'm inspecting the traffic once as it flows through. So I'm able to, unwrap it, inspect it, apply all my security services, and then send it on its way. Do that in a very efficient way, in line with the way that the traffic would already be flowing. It becomes very elastic, right? Both on the bandwidth side, on the networking side, but also on the security side. I'm able to scale up and down very, very easily. I can add new security services as threats evolve. One of the really important things about SASE on the security side is it's very identity centric, right? So when we think about it's user-based policy, it's risk-based policy. It allows me to bring these two concepts and apply uniform policy across my access, my networking, my security, based on who the user is and the risk of that session. And those risk attributes continue to grow over time. It could be location, it could be time of day, it could be software that's installed on that endpoint and the security posture of that endpoint, and all sorts of things that factor into that risk assessment, and allows for continuous assessment of that risk, and then responding when that risk changes. So as risk changes, it allows me to then deny access or require multi-factor authentication or change my access controls dynamically based off of that change. So what SASE does is it brings these two concepts together, applies them in the cloud, right? And then it gives this nice control plane that makes all of this deployment very easy, right? Get your centralized management and reporting in the cloud, this single pane of glass. So while you have your control plane in the cloud, you can distribute your enforcement points as needed, whether they're kind of in the core of the cloud, they could be at the edge of those branch offices, they could be at the host of the user, and it orchestrates those enforcement points across that deployment. So I want to take a little bit of a detour here and talk about something. You hear zero trust a lot, right? You hear it in the context of SASE, and especially this idea of ZTNA, zero trust network access, and it's a really important concept, right? Because it overlays onto all these concepts that we've talked about already, and think about it as, again, zero trust. So think with a deny by default sort of policy. Everything is blocked, and then I allow access. I build up access in as kind of granular as a way as I possibly can. But it's implemented in a way that makes that very, very simple and easy to do, and it just minimizes that attack surface that as much as possible. So user A is accessing application B, right? And I'm gonna allow that, right? I'm going to those on-premises applications, I'm going to those cloud applications, and I can create these group-based policies that allow that very sort of finite access control, and it's almost always based off of identity of the user. And then again, you can apply these risk policies and this continuous assessment. Provides end-to-end encryption, right? So from point A to point B, you're from that user to that application. You can provide a tunnel that the user is going through, and these ETNA solutions typically have an endpoint agent, right? And a lot of the security is implemented at that endpoint agent. So again, this management plane, this control plane in the cloud that's delivering policy out to these endpoints as they change and allow for this access and control this access in this very sort of granular way. So this concept of ZTNA is really important as an overlay into SASE for some of these use cases, right? And again, when you look at those 4 usage scenarios now and you start applying these concepts, the boundaries between them sort of start to dissolve, right? And it doesn't matter if a user is in the office or at home at that point, because you're protecting their access in a very granular way. So let's now take these ideas and apply them to those 4 usage scenarios and look at how a traditional deployment would then evolve into a SASE-based deployment for each of the 4, right? So connecting offices together. So now I have this idea kind of in the middle here, this SASE core, right? I got my networking as a service and my security service that are being provided in that SASE core. I have POPs that are being provided and networks, right? These are sites that are connecting to those POPs. Routing and security are happening as traffic flows through those different, from one site to the other. Or same thing applies for infrastructure as a service, right? If I'm going to AWS or Azure, you would apply a lot of those same sorts of rules as they go through. And so you think about, now what are the advantages of doing that, right? It helps me reduce costs. I can use any ISP. In many cases, I would still use multi-WAN and have multiple connections going from my site to this SASE core. But I can now rely on the SASE vendor to optimize that traffic, to make sure that routing from my site to AWS or Azure is very efficient as it goes up there. It removes my dependency on MPLS and offers some cost savings potentially from that. But it's really about improving performance, right? Again, I'm able to optimize my traffic as it flows through this. I'm optimizing my security traffic as it flows through the network and applying a common set of security policies on it. It's very easy for me now to add a site, right? I can add a site, connect it to the POP with a couple of ISP connections. I don't have to wait for my MPLS provider to provide that network drop. And so it becomes very easy to onboard or offboard a site from my network. And it provides me or you as an MSP with this great operational efficiency, right? I have visibility into what's going. It scales as I grow. It's very easy for me to maintain these sites, right? My mesh networking now becomes very simple because I'm relying on the SASE core to do a lot of that. So I'm just connecting into it, and then it's segmented off. My traffic is segmented off, and it allows for me to have that growth, that scalability, both on the networking stack and the security stack. And sort of in this idea of, okay, now I have 2 sites connected together, flowing through the SASE core. My security now is in line, right? I don't have to create any inefficiencies in my networking to get it to my security. My security has been moved in line with my traffic. I don't have to worry about any of these hair-pitting scenarios. I have this nice unified security platform, this nice unified security stack that's being delivered from my SASE core. And then you can start overlaying some of these ZTNA concepts as we get into some of these other scenarios, right? So now I'm thinking about an office worker, right, who maybe is at site A, and they want to get to the internet. They're going to a public network, to a public site, to a SaaS application, to the internet. And what does that look like? So now, the users on the site, the picture here is identical, right? The traffic is now flowing through the SASE core. Again, I've now able to improve that performance. The network is dropping off that traffic close to those SaaS applications, providing efficiency in that routing to those SaaS applications. It's very easy for me as a user, as an administrator, an MSP, to manage this environment. I don't have to worry about scaling as my users go up and down within those branch offices, right? As they start working from home, I can easily scale that down. My users now have a consistent user experience, right? As we draw out what the work from home picture looks like, they're going to get the same experience, the same set of security services, and it's really easy for me to add new sites and new users at those sites to these deployments. And again, my security now is in line, right? The user is on their way to the internet. Security's in line. With a traditional deployment, it was likely in line as well, right, as you were routing out to the internet, but you may have to go to the corporate headquarters first, right? In this scenario, you don't need to, so you eliminate some of those hairpinning or additional routing sorts of scenarios. Again, you have that unified security stack. Here is really important. Now that I start talking about users accessing applications, I can overlay these zero trust concepts, right? Of zero trust network access, of just allowing the user very kind of granular access to only the things that they need to get to reduce that threat surface. Both now when they're on the network, I'm reducing the threat surface, which helps me with reduced lateral movement within my network, and users accessing applications that they don't really need access to. And it allows me to move to this very sort of identity-centric and risk-based approach to networking. So now let's look at the two remote user scenarios, right? So now a remote user accessing something on the network, right? They're remote, they're VPNing, in the traditional scenario, they were VPNing into the office to get access to something. And now I can just connect my mobile user or my home user into my SASE core, and then it will route traffic to the applications that they need to get to. It routes it through the SASE core, right? So I'm able to put my security in line with my traffic now, so I don't have to, right? We had that big hairpinning sort of scenario in the traditional sense. That goes away here, and it really improves performance for my users, because my POPs now that my SASE provider is giving me are closer to my user, right? So it provides them with additional efficiency. It optimizes that routing from where they are to my on-premises applications. As a service provider, as an MSP, it's very efficient for me to operate a network like this. It reduces certainly configuration errors and that ongoing maintenance. It scales as my users scale, right? So if overnight all my users are working from home, right, I don't have to worry about scaling up an infrastructure. The infrastructure scales for me. It provides that elasticity that grows and shrinks as my users are moving from the office or home or back to the office. And no matter where they are, whether they're in the office scenario or the home scenario, they're getting a very consistent user experience, right? That helps me reduce my costs, my help desk costs, because they're always doing the same thing, and it's very consistent for the users. And it's very easy for me to add on new users. And then I get all these great security benefits as well, right? Because now when I'm talking about these remote user access scenarios, I can leverage ZTNA to segment off that traffic, and so that they only have access to the things that I grant them access to. And so I don't, I completely move away from zero routing traffic, or even giving them access to subnets. I can do it in a very granular way. So user A has access to application B in a very sort of easy to manage, from a policy perspective, a very easy managed way. And this reduces that threat surface, right? It provides that traffic I know can only get from the places that I want, and it helps really reduce that sort of risk of some of that lateral movement. And again, now with ZTNA, I can use risk policies, and so as that risk of the user changes, right? Maybe their software gets out of date, or they move to a new location, or I see location hopping, right? Things like that. I can continuously assess that and change the access policy based off of it, leveraging these ZTNA concepts. And again, I have this nice consistent stack of security services. So they're getting the same security now when they're VPNing in as they did when they were in the office. Good, consistent security. And then when we move to the fourth case, right, where a home user is now accessing SaaS applications, or they're accessing the internet. This is one of the scenarios that had some of the biggest gaps when we were looking at the traditional deployment. Again, from a SASE perspective, it looks exactly the same. I'm connecting my users to the SASE instead of them getting routed to the on-premises network. They're getting routed to the internet, again, in a very efficient way. The advantages now is the users are enjoying that optimized routing. Now when they're at home and they're accessing SaaS applications, again, as an MSP, I have all this really kind of wonderful consistency that allows me to have consistent access across all the scenarios, and it's really easy for me to add users. And then the security benefits here are really tremendous, right? Because now my home users are getting firewall as a service. They're getting that same level of security when they're in the office, when they're at home, even if they're just accessing the internet, right? I can provide that full security stack to them when they're accessing the internet. So they're getting that very sort of consistent security as they did when they were an office worker. So let's jump into polling question number 4, and I'll try to wrap up here really quickly. Alicia, is that coming up here?
Yes, it should.
Okay, great.
I can see it now, but I don't know. People it's not now. People started voting.
Okay, great. Yeah, it looks like with a couple of technical difficulties, I'm going to go a couple of minutes over here. So as an MSP, which of the SASE scenarios offers the best opportunity for you, right? Where do you see applying SASE to your customer's network and really providing a nice opportunity for you as an MSP to help your customers through this transformation? So if you were to prioritize these, which would you implement for your customers first?
You should see the results in a few seconds.
Okay, excellent. Oh, there they are. So ZTNA for all users, whether they're on or off the network, right? 50% of users, firewall as a service for remote users. So between those two, I have a 75, very consistent with some of the demands on the traditional side on moving. And this provides, again, that really great sort of consistent user scenario or experience for users. So when you put it all together, right, you think about, you end up with better security for your customers. It's more efficient for you as an MSP. It's very simple to manage and maintain, again, for you as an MSP or for your customers. And it's a lower cost to operate, right? You're reducing your costs, you're dealing with fewer vendors, gives you that economies of scale, provides you with that automation that you need as an MSP. And so as I dive into kind of from an MSP's perspective, what are the things that I care about? And I kind of broke it into these 3 categories, right? So the first one is really take a long-term view of what you're doing. Again, these aren't things that you want to shift to overnight, like this entire concept of SASE, right? All 4 deployment scenarios, you don't want to implement them over the weekend and have everybody come to work on Monday with the new a new SASE infrastructure. You want to think about, how do I prioritize these different use cases, and what's important to me? Am I focused on the users? Am I focused on home access, remote workforce? Am I looking at that networking efficiency, and really kind of build yourself a long-term roadmap? I would look for a vendor that's pulling these things together, that their roadmap is aligned with your priorities. And you know, these are things that it's very difficult for you as an MSP to be able to stitch this together yourselves. And so you really need to be working with someone who you're aligned with on their vision. And really think about it as a hybrid approach, right? You know, the perimeter, the data center, those ideas, those concepts will persist, and those enforcement points continue to be at the edge. And so you really got to look at this hybrid of approach of some of the concepts that you have today, as well as moving some of these things to the cloud. So the second category is about the vendor and things that you should be looking for somebody with deep security knowledge, right? You don't want a vendor that's kind of new to the security industry. You don't want somebody who's new at building cloud services. You want to find a vendor that's really has that security experience, that cloud experience, that networking experience, and can build a holistic platform. Again, that's kind of aligned with your priorities and how you're building this out. And you know, for our MSP community, look for a vendor that understands how you do your business, right? Look for a vendor that is focused on the MSP, right? So we see a lot of vendors out there. Some are focused on the MSP, others are focused on the enterprise, some are focused on you know, end customer, maybe retail customers, things like that. You know, make sure that your vendor understands what's important to you, and understands that relationship that you have with your customers, and understands, you know, your you know, how you make your money, how you drive profitability in your business, how you drive cash flow in your business, who's committed to evolving and adding services over time, right? Helping you monetize some of those additional services, some of those higher value services as they come. Vendor needs to understand the MSP ecosystem, right? How does a PSA or an RMM tool fit into the equation, and all of the MSP tools that you're using today? You need to be able to continue to operate and run your business using those tools, and make sure that as you're going through this SASE roadmap, the SASE evolution, that it fits nicely into those tools that you're using today. And finally, that you know, really understands, again, this kind of drives back to some of that cash flow statements, but that really understands licensing options that can empower you as an MSP to do some of that licensing yourself, right? So you can onboard your customers, that you can do your licensing yourself, so that it empowers you as the MSP to be able to react quickly to the needs of your customers and do it in an efficient and profitable way. And then finally, pick a platform that's going to grow with you, right? You want this consolidated platform, this idea of single pane approach, a single platform, of a unified security platform that provides both this networking as a service and security as a service that comes together, that it has that scalability and the elasticity that I talked about in each of those deployment scenarios. It's really important that you can grow quickly and that you can shrink quickly, right? As you know, you're reacting to changes in your customers' networks. You know, make sure that identity is an important part of their strategy, right? Of the platform strategy, and it can't be an afterthought. It needs to be kind of deeply ingrained into policy and what you're doing. And that applies to both identity policy and risk-based policy, and really supporting those zero trust concepts across the entire platform. And then finally, right, I think from a security perspective, when you start building a platform like this, you want to make sure that those services, it's not just this independent stack of services that are just stuck in the core. Those services can learn from each other. They can collaborate with each other, and they look for a vendor that's leveraging telemetry and machine learning and collaboration of services in a way that helps you, that provides efficiency for you, that provides higher security for your customers. Really important part of the overall concept. I'm going to skip the last polling question here, and just so we can wrap up, I just wanted really quickly to kind of lay out what WatchGuard is doing in this space. Right. Again, today was intended to really be educational for you, but make sure that you understand that where WatchGuard is on this journey and bringing this transformation for you out to your customers. And there are 4 things that are driving our strategy, our technology strategy at WatchGuard, and it's these four things. First and foremost, we're focused on the MSP. Right. We really have this kind of philosophy that when you guys win, when our partners win, that we win as a vendor. And so everything that we're doing is we're trying to build this platform with you in mind in a way that you can service your customers, right? And make sure that your customers are happy, you're winning, and then in turn WatchGuard will win. So we're first and foremost an MSP first vendor. The second thing is this, what we've talked about today. Our customers' topologies are changing. Applications are moving to the cloud. Users are going remote, right? This idea that remote workforce is the new normal, and this acknowledgement that the world is changing and helping you evolve through that change, and looking at the way that your traditional deployments need to evolve into those next generation deployments is significantly driving our roadmap. And so you'll see these concepts and help you evolve from those traditional deployments to a SASE deployment. So this idea that the world is changing, the network topology is changing, and our security platform, our unified security platform, is going to be the tool that helps you through that evolution. The idea that the unified security, right, it really helps you defeat that complexity. So making it simple for you to deploy, to manage, and in each one of those deployment scenarios I talked about, right, heavily focused on reducing complexity, right, reducing errors, make it easier for you to maintain, make it easier for you to deploy consistent security across all of those deployment areas, but also give you a platform that provides that collaboration of those services in a way that benefits you from an efficiency perspective and a security perspective. And the fourth pillar for us is all about identity. It always has been. It was the first service that we built in WatchGuard Cloud, and this idea that identity drives everything that we do. We've extended that with our risk framework, so we have identity and risk kind of permeating throughout the entire platform. And it's really important that it's not an afterthought. It's not something you bolt on. It's really woven in. It's ingrained into all of those zero trust policies, all of that zero trust networking, and what you need to do, and as that evolves over time. And this is kind of what it looks like from a sort of a platform perspective. The unified security platform from WatchGuard offers you this protection across endpoint, network, and cloud. So everywhere that your customers are operating, and providing you with that unified security platform that covers all of those areas, with endpoint security, with network security, with again, driving our roadmap around firewall as a service, and bringing in some of those zero trust networking concepts and firewall as a service concepts into that overall unified security platform, and then cloud protection and access controls that again are built into the platform. And it's all built on top of an MSP focused set of services, right? And so whether that's our identity framework that's driving zero trust, or the way we do policy management that's focused on a service provider with multiple customers and making that efficient, threat sync, which is that correlation engine, and telemetry engine and XDR strategy for us, our automation core that's focused both on operational automation for you, the MSP, as well as security automation, right? Making sure we have predictive automation capabilities within the security stack. And then licensing and tenant management for you as an MSP, so you can onboard your customers and license them all in a self-service manner. So just to wrap it up, it's really about the WatchGuard security platform and the evolution to help you as an MSP deliver these next generation and future concepts, this evolution of secure access service edge to your customers.
Andrew, we have a few questions that probably we are over the time, but probably you can take a couple of minutes to try to answer them. Can you see them in the questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So a couple of questions here. There's one about a POP in India, and I think about when I look at that secure access, that SASE core, it is important to have these POPs around the world that really provide that infrastructure and that efficiency of routing in that core, both coming in to the core as well as coming out. So it is important to have global POPs. And actually, I can answer from a WatchGuard perspective. We're really focused on having presence as our firewalls and service is being built out in 3 geographies around the world, and building that out across APAC, Europe, and the US. So scaling cloud server firewall services, but scaling bandwidth is different. And so, yeah, I think that's really interesting. And when you think about bandwidth scaling within a SASE core, you really got to look at sort of actually all 4 usage scenarios, because they provide very different bandwidth requirements, right? When you're looking at site to site, obviously, you may have higher bandwidth requirements. If I have an end user who's accessing on-premises applications, actually that's probably one of the lower bandwidth requirement constraints. The end user to the internet, right? That kind of pure firewall as a service. Now you're opening yourself to a lot more bandwidth considerations, a lot more bandwidth needs and requirements. And so each one of those scenarios, it depends how you prioritize within the 4, and thinking about how you scale, but bandwidth considerations are really important. And looking at those and making sure, again, that they scale and are elastic on the networking side before you get to security is a really good point, and I think really important. So a really good question here, raised as the elephant in the room, right? Which is, what is WatchGuard doing? And hopefully I touched on, kind of what we're doing today, but our focus is really on prioritizing these use cases along with you and delivering these services. It's an important part of what we're delivering today around zero trust and that platform approach, and bringing that hub to the cloud is really what's driving a lot of the next steps from WatchGuard. So definitely stay tuned in that space. I think it's a great question, and it's something that, again, it's important that your priorities are aligned with WatchGuard's priorities. If you're a WatchGuard partner, and that those priorities are aligned, and that we're building those out together in a way that makes sense for each other. Couple of similar questions. I think I touched that one. I think I touched that one. So, okay. I think we got all the questions there, Alicia.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you all for joining this webinar. Just one thing, remember that in the upcoming days, we will share with you the recorded session and also the presentation. And when we finish the webinar, a survey is going to pop up. So please feel free to share your thoughts with us. Well, thanks and have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.